If you're interested in being a model, there are some things that many people in the industry know but aren't talked about as much mainstream. Today, I will cover everything I've learned as a model in the industry so far, from finances to rejection to social media and more. And these are learnings I realized only when I started modeling and figured out along the way. The first thing you have to be comfortable with is knowing that for many of us, modeling is very inconsistent. If you are booking jobs regularly, that's amazing, and props to you for doing that, because that's where I want to be. But for a lot of us, just because you're signed with an agency doesn't mean that you will be booking jobs regularly. When I first started out, for example, I was with an agency and I was with them for about a year and a half. And in that time frame, I only booked one job through them. Even now, I'm still not booking consistently. I get castings and it ranges from maybe 0 to 5 castings a week, depending on the week and depending on the month too. But really there's hundreds and hundreds of models going for these castings when there might only be like 5 slots available. I, for example, went to a casting this past week and they were seeing models for around 2.5 hours. I arrived within the first 45 minutes. I brought my comp card, which is the model business card. It has my pictures on the front and back and it has my measurements. They called me up to see me. I gave them my comp card and they took it and placed it in a pile that was, I promise you, is like this thick of models that they have already seen. And that was within the first 45 minutes. And there were going to be more models coming in later. So it just goes to show how competitive it is to book these types of jobs. So if you're signed, you might not be working right away. You also might not know when you will be casting either. Sometimes you might even get a request for a casting 2 days before the actual casting date, and then the job shoots the day or 2 days after that. Everything generally moves pretty quickly. If you cast for something, most likely they'll shoot within 2 to 3 weeks of the casting date. So if you have another job where you have to work certain days or hours, you would have to plan accordingly. So because everything is so inconsistent, it's really important to be on top of your finances. As I mentioned before, if you're starting out as a model, you probably don't know when you're going to be booked. But on top of that, when you are booked, it's normal not to be paid for 1 to 3 months after you've completed the job. Because of all of this, it's always important that you're saving, and it's important that you're allocating a portion of your modeling income to taxes as well. Technically, as a model, you're an independent contractor. You'll have to pay taxes yourself when you file them. So you should be getting a 1099 form if you're with an agency, and I think that's if you made over $600 that year. If you're not represented, then you should be getting a 1099 form from the client you booked with to file your taxes. And if you're signed with an agency, which many models generally are, the norm is to give 20% of your modeling paycheck to your agency as their commission. Sometimes agents have also prepaid for your test shoot fees, for your website fees, any other fees, maybe comp cards too. But if that's the case and it came out of the agency, then they may be taking that money out of your first paycheck too, or however many paychecks it takes to cover their costs. At the same time, you're also eligible to write off any modeling costs as business expenses as well. I've written off paid test shoots, so shoots where I have hired a photographer and makeup artist to build my portfolio. I've written off clothes that I've purchased for castings, comp cards. Just make sure you keep track of all of these expenses as they come up, and be sure to ask for receipts and invoices too. For me, I keep all of these receipts in a Google Docs folder, so when it's time to file taxes, I have everything in one place. As a model, you will be faced with a lot of rejection. In the industry, it's normal to get 1,000 more no's than yeses. And this is from when you apply to agencies to when you submit auditions for castings for potential clients. And to me, the most frustrating type of rejection is when a client is really interested in booking me and they ask me to place these dates on hold. So basically saying, please don't book anything else during these dates. But then they ultimately decide to go in a different direction. They just never communicate that to me. So I only know that I've been rejected when the shoot dates have passed. And that's pretty much the same thing for a casting too, where you send in your casting or you go into an in-person casting and you just assume that if they're interested, they'll contact you. And when the shoot dates have passed or the work dates have passed, that's when you know that you haven't booked the job. I do realize that they are not able to get back to all the agencies or models because they have so many models cast for just a few select slots. But you have to be comfortable with doing your best, giving them your best, and not taking anything personally. I think for me, the more difficult part is not knowing why you got rejected or how you can improve on your casting. But even then, sometimes it's just that the casting director wanted someone else of like a particular look, and between you and that someone else, they decided to go with that someone else. And my next point is that no, we don't get to keep the clothes. It's a common misconception, but the majority of the time we don't get to keep the clothes. One time I was shooting for an athletic brand. I was one of 10 or 15 models that day. And so there were like 3 wardrobe stylists that were managing all of us. And I had a headband as part of my look. At one point I had a long break in between shooting, so I decided to take it off because it was hurting my head. I wrapped it around my wrist. And one of the wardrobe stylists came over and was like, "You still have the headband that we gave you, right?" So in general, they keep very close tabs on the wardrobe items that you're wearing. And you do have to return everything at the end of the shoot, usually. When brands are interested in booking you, they will definitely check out your social media links. In fact, sometimes when you cast for something, they explicitly ask for your TikTok, Instagram, maybe YouTube links. So you have to keep your social media updated and professional, and it has to have recent, clear photos of you. You just never know who might be looking. I once had a booking where they had created a mood board, and one of the images they put on the mood board was an image on my Instagram from like a year ago. It was super unexpected, and it made me realize that they go back pretty far when they look at your social media profiles if they want to. When you're getting into the industry, no one explicitly tells you that it might be easier to book jobs if you don't have any semi-permanent beauty modifications. And I say beauty modifications because I don't really know the general term for this, but basically I mean acrylic nails, eyelash extensions, anything that might look non-natural. And the reasoning for this is because clients want to be able to mold or shape your look however they want. It's hard to do this if you have modifications that are hard to hide or hard to work with. I mentioned one example, eyelash extensions. If a client is trying to find a model for like a fresh, dewy skincare shoot, they might not even consider someone with eyelash extensions because A, it might not look natural, B, if it does look natural, maybe it's a little bit sparse, like it has to be filled in. So there's just too many factors to consider if it's not their natural bare face. And acrylic nails is another example. If a model has long nails and it's in a non-natural color, it might be hard for them to get bookings because it might not fit with the vibe that the client is trying to go for. You might be able to get away with gel if they're well maintained, but generally they are harder to remove, and you might get a last minute casting for an audition where they ask specifically for natural nails and no nail polish. It's not uncommon for me to get a casting where they specifically ask to see like the fronts and backs of my hands, so I literally have to show this. And so that's why I generally don't go for a gel nail polish either. For tattoos and piercings, ironically, I feel like it's not as big of a deal. I feel like tattoos and piercings generally show off more of your personality and who you are. And I've even seen casting requests specifically asking for people who have like multiple ear piercings or like a tattoo for like an edgy streetwear vibe. So these are all of the things off the top of my head that I learned when I started in the modeling industry. I'm curious to know which one surprised you the most. So if you feel comfortable, please comment it down below. And if you like this video, please do like and subscribe because it helps me out a lot. If you're interested in more modeling videos, you might consider watching this video here where I talk about everything you need to know before you sign your modeling contract.